legal, so you know it is something that is given to you by law. Personal, so it is given to you in your capacity. And representative, you are representing someone, and in this case you are representing the deceased. So you have the authority to walk, in a sense, walk in the shoes of the deceased and fulfill his or her obligation, since he or she can no longer do so.
Right, right. So, in law, the legal personal representative, the LPR, the administrator, is usually a person who's lawfully appointed, right?
That's correct.
And their function as the LPR, namely, as you would have outlined, is to administer the estate. Now, over the years, Ms. Joseph, because I will give you my experiences and then you could share yours. What are some of the things you have seen LPRs do or fail to do when they are so appointed with this very special power?
All right, I'll give an example that is very close to my heart because it's very real and we tend to take it for granted. Almost all of us know the 𝗥𝗲𝗴 Cemetery, almost every Trinidadian. And an LPR a couple of years ago, instead of passing the property to themselves, because they were a daughter and two other children, they passed the property, this is the cemetery plot, to themselves and their line of children. And when that person died and their brother and sister came to the Port of Spain Corporation, where I was working then, to bury that person, then they discovered that they had no rights, because even the cemetery plot was not given to them as it ought to have been. And so I'm saying LPRs tend to be often very selfish, very conniving, very scampish, very greedy persons, and they take from beneficiaries what are not theirs. They misrepresent the facts, they hide the documents, and they take years before they do anything about the property, and we know about that. So, you know, they are very unscrupulous.
Yes.
Many of them.
And I want to address all of those things you've mentioned because I too have personal and professional experiences with LPR. I have a personal family relative who is a notorious bad LPR. He was appointed twice. So the first instance, he was a co-administrator with his brother. And for 17 years to this date, he would have been appointed in 2005. And he still has never done the deed of assent. He chose to live in one of those properties under his administrative authority. He would have tricked the beneficiaries to believe that he could use the grant of letter of administration to authorize him to live in the house. And so he would have lived in that house rent-free for 17, 18 years. Run it down to a state of dilapidation and then remarried and moved out. And now the beneficiaries have been robbed because the value of the property has now been depleted. There were never any, renovations or upgrades, anything. There was no maintenance of the property. And he has since moved on. And then he would have come again to a second killing and would have refused to administer for his late wife, who would have had, she died in a manner that entitled her for lawsuit. He refused to administer her property and had to be taken to court for someone else to be appointed ad litem because he just wanted the statute of limitations to pass and not take up suit, right? So some people, and oftentimes these are people who generally in life, they socially have issues with control. They socially, they are a bit troublesome. They tend to be very problematic when it comes to understanding their true LPR power, right? Now, one of the things, Avian, an LPR could mean either an executor or an administrator, correct?
I am glad you said that, because I know I am, you said
Yeah.
we are confining it to intestacy, but the
No,
truth
but we
is,
don't.
it's a term that can go for testacy
For
as well
both.
as intestacy, because
Yes.
the person or persons are tasked to do the same thing, administer the
Correct.
estate of the deceased.
Correct. Very, very correct. And so I stand corrected on that. I wanted to just make it a bit simple for persons, but generally, in fact, an LPR is both, can be referred to, right, as either the an executor or an administrator can be referred to as an LPR. All right. So LPRs, one of the things we want you all to understand and recognize, number one, an LPR, does an LPR have total and okay, let me go to another ask. Is there an expiration of the time that an LPR has to deal with an estate? What is their time constraints, if any? Or is it into time immemorial?
The short answer is uncertain to some extent. Because when we're dealing with testacy, although we're dealing with intestacy, we use testacy as a guide. There's something called the executor's year, within which you need to begin to act where there is a will. And if we should take off from that, the spirit of that indicates that you should act in a timely manner. That's the best answer I can say for the.
So that is whether testate or intestate. Once someone is tasked or is appointed with that administrative or legal personal representative power, they generally have a year to try to deal with the estate.
In the case of an executor, and so we are just taking off from that for intestacy and say, you should want to pursue the matter as quickly as possible.
No question. If we have a matter of intestacy now, and this LPR has been doing nothing, 10 years, the properties, as I said, is in a disrepair. Can the beneficiaries use that executor's year principle?
Absolutely, because our courts are reasonable, and what is fair and just. And if he has taken an unduly long, or she unduly long length of time to do what it's supposed to do, and they have a grant in their possession, you go to court and have it revoked. So someone else, another beneficiary, can step in and begin to do because during that time, as the example you have used, the estate is run down, it goes into disrepair, subject to waste and devastate and that kind of thing. And the value for the beneficiary wanes and can wane very, rapidly with the passage of time. Yes. So you're correct. He or she is doing an injustice to those who are to benefit.
And I love that. And Ms. Joseph, I love that you would have mentioned that. Oftentimes, I think both LPRs and beneficiaries forget the beneficial rights of the beneficiaries. Although an LPR holds administrative and decision-making power, and even in some cases, power of sale, which many of them, they love that power. All right. At the end of the day, the right to benefit is a very important one. And an LPR cannot illegally, or should not illegally, or should I ask you, can an LPR illegally prevent, hamper, or disrupt a beneficiary's beneficial interest in property?
The short answer is yes. We know they do it all the time.
But can they legally do it? And is there any redress for the...
Of course, no, the short answer is they ought not to.
Right.
but many of them do, and beneficiaries need to take a hold of that situation and go to court and have it redressed.
Right. And as the point I want to bring over, Ms. Joseph, that beneficiaries have rights. I have seen many beneficiaries at the mercy of the LPR. There was one lady, remember, this person was tested, but 17 years, right? And this executor is heading into their 90s and refuses to, deal with the estate.
But that same point about you saying of beneficiaries, a nice clause in law that beneficiaries need to be well aware of is the whole question of sleeping on your rights. Some
What do
of
you mean
them
by
never
that?
wake up sleeping on their rights. As so you have said, beneficiaries have rights. And if they allow years and years to pass by and they've done nothing, they have not gone to any attorney for advice or anything like that, the court could accuse them of having slept on their rights, and then you cannot claim ignorance. Because what did you do? When did you become aware of the fact that you are entitled to X share in property?
So beneficiaries beware, and that's why we're doing a lot of these webinars. We're hoping that it informs and educates the public. It may not be you in the situation, but you may know of someone or heard of something, and you can say, I heard a webinar where they mentioned about beneficial rights and the rights of beneficiaries. This may be something you look into. Please find an attorney. Please deal with this. This is a very big problem locally. I can't reiterate this more. We really need persons. I'm seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of families losing property and rights to inheritance generation after generation because of not understanding these things and sleeping on rights.